Hey there, it's Wednesday, October 26, 2022. I'm Cory Morgan. Welcome to the show. October 26. We finally got snow. It's starting to look like the end of October. We're coming up on Orange and Black Day. Yeah, I know. It's Halloween. There's even some schools, though, that can't even say Halloween. The fun, the anti-fun, weird, woke left, they shut down every little bit of enjoyment in life for kids. But let's not let them get away with that one. It's Halloween. Kids have a hell of a time for it. They have fun. They dress up. They get some candies, whatever, stuff like that. Let them do it, for crying out loud. But yes, this is the show where I will poke at the woke. They deserve it. I'll rant on the news. I will go on about issues. And of course, we'll interact. We have that comment section, guys. Make use of it. It's much appreciated. Good to see you there, Ashley and North Run, Greater Paradoxy already in there. Chat with each other. Send questions to me, to the guests, to others. I like the interaction. Live, you know, we get hiccups. We get problems now and then with it. But the thing that's fun and good about it is we just kind of take it where it'll go. And having that interaction with you guys makes it worth the other challenges of going live. So get on there, share your thoughts, chat with each other. Make sure to keep it polite and civil, though. Of course, you know, we can get a little nasty and things. I do sometimes, but we can still stay in line. We don't have to be at each other's throats. Good to see you there, Mary Dunn, Diana Bridgman, all you folks already starting to check in. We got a good show today. I'm going to be, a guest is coming on, Margret Kopela. She was with C2C Journal. She had an article out, and she just released a book. The timing's good. The book is The Great Reset Exposed, 18 Essays Against the Great Reset. So yes, she's got a collection of essays from a number of people about the Great Reset, and that is the thing from the World Economic Forum. And good to see you there, Mary, Debbie, Tracy, and Tammy. Everybody's popping in. So I'll get ranting. It is coincidence, but it hit the news. I'm going to be talking about the World Economic Forum myself. So, I mean, rather than trying to paint Premier Danielle Smith as a conspiracy theorist for her daring to call out the World Economic Forum's ties to Alberta Health Services, our legacy media outlets should be demanding to know why the organization was involved in provincial agencies at all. We can't expect that sort of critical thinking from our legacy media outlets, though, can we? I mean, there's some wild conspiracy theories out there involved in the WEF. Practically every public figure on Earth has been exposed on social media of being a patsy for the WEF one time or another. Hell, even I've been accused of it occasionally on Twitter. I've seen conspiracies tying the WEF to everything from mind control efforts to sneaking microchips into unsuspecting vaccine recipients. Now, the white noise of fringe conspiracy theorists has allowed the WEF and its odious agenda to slide under the radar. What they have is a conspiracy right out in the wide open. There's no need to concoct theories about their agenda. Their prime mandate lately has been the Great Reset. They want to take advantage of the crisis brought about by the pandemic to reset the world's economic system and impose socialism. It's no conspiracy. Just go to their website. They have it right there, front and center. Now, this notion could be just dismissed as an aspiration of some think tank that, you know, if we didn't hear that world leaders, though, including Justin Trudeau, parroting it, we have to then take their agenda more seriously. I mean, the WEF put out a notorious video telling us you will own nothing and you will be happy. This group also celebrated the empty roads caused by the lockdowns and implied that it's a good thing. Klaus Schwab is the founder of the elite group, and he makes no bones about his intent to see global governance under socialism. His annual gatherings in Switzerland bring world political and business leaders together, and Schwab loves to brag about how he's penetrated world governments, including Canada's. In a video, Schwab said, "I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that more than half of his cabinet, or even more than half of his cabinet, are actually young global leaders." Now, he's referring to the WEF Young Global Leaders program and implying that most of the Canadian cabinet is part of it. How is this supposed to be taken lightly or dismissed? It's a foreign person talking about controlling our government. Even if he isn't controlling it, we got to dismiss these guys or distance ourselves from them. Now, let's assume that the WEF doesn't really have the influence it claims it does. I mean, Schwab is certainly something of a blowhard. What if it really is just a group of big-talking rich folks who like to talk big and meet every year and don't really influence governments that much? Well, in that case, what the hell was the WEF doing tied to the Alberta healthcare system? I mean, the WEF is not a world medical organization. They're an activist group. There's dozens of qualified organizations that can take an advisory role with the local health systems, but the WEF isn't one of them. Why were they chosen to partner with Alberta at any level, and by who? What was the intention? AHS can't even manage to get ambulances to dying citizens on time. They have more pressing things to do with their time than spend time and money on coalitions with the World Economic Forum. Even if the WEF coalition had no impact on Alberta's health system, there's no reason they should be connected to it in any way. This is a very questionable organization. Now, Premier Smith correctly tossed the coalition out of the AHS and called them out. And for doing that, our legacy media and socialist activists, of course, have been trying to paint Smith as a crazed conspiracy theorist. Thankfully, Smith is standing firm. I don't think that the WEF is as influential as some people believe it is. But when the organization has its tendrils all the way down into a provincial healthcare system, it has to be assumed their reach is pretty wide. There's questions to be asked, but the establishment media in Alberta is asking the wrong ones. We won't. That's what's got my blood pressure going today, guys. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I can't believe you would hear that actually directly associated, but here we are. How can you dismiss these guys? They're even all the way down to that. What else are they tied into? All right, let's get on to some more current news and check in with our news editor, Dave Naylor, and see what else is breaking out there. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going well, Cory, but I heard there's trouble brewing on the old homestead. Let's get right to the bare facts.
That stupid bear. He's been a real pain in the butt. He keeps coming back. I gave him a buttload of rubber buckshot last week. I thought that would be the end of it. He doesn't come around when I'm anywhere nearby anymore, but he tore my fence down last night, so he's still in the neighborhood. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that thing as time goes here.
Well, so you shot it in the ass?
Yes. Oh. My house bounds on the bush, and that bear would come around, and he knew he'd get on the other side of the game fence, and he'd just be 20 feet back in the trees, and then just stare at me whenever I would come out and ignore me, and then come back into the yard when I'd go back in. So this time I thought, okay, and I got that rubber buckshot. I didn't even know you could buy that, but yeah, you got Canadian Tire, and gave him a buttload of that, and he didn't like that whatsoever. I thought that was the end, but here he is again, so I'm not sure what it's going to take with this guy.
Don, I tell you, Duke the Wonder Dog is valiantly trying to protect you during all these bear incidents.
He's valiantly biting fleas in the corner of the living room by the heat register, but at least he looks scary.
And you can't just call Fish and Wildlife to come and set a trap and remove it. I think that's what they would do with a grizzly, wouldn't they?
With a grizzly, or some areas where bears aren't typical or common, but with where I live, the bears are all over the place. They wouldn't be able to keep up with relocating and moving them. So we'll just have to keep discouraging them, I guess, and getting them to move along one way or another.
Poor thing. Well, we've been had a very busy morning here at the Western Standard and on the website, Cory, sort of led off by our old friend Duncan Kenny, who you will no doubt recall fondly. He's the editor of a very left-wing publication called Progress Alberta. And last August, he sort of broke a story about how a Ukrainian monument in Edmonton had been vandalized and covered with red paint. And the Progress Alberta reported and actually showed pictures of, they said that the photos were leaked to them of the damage. Well, it turns out Mr. Kinney has got himself in a bit of hot water, and he might be a bit red-faced himself this morning because he was charged by police with defacing those monuments, or the one monument, excuse me. So, he's been a particular critic of ours, and no doubt his fall from grace will be end with a thud. We've also got breaking news on Leela Ahir. Finished dead last in the UCP leadership race, was not offered a job in the cabinet, despite the 6 other contenders doing so. So she has announced today she will not run for the UCP in her riding of, I believe it's Chestermere Strathmore. She hasn't ruled out running for another party, I guess. And our Linda Slobodian had actually had a column up earlier today that she was perhaps eyeing a run for the UCP in Calgary Elbow. And we had confirmed that. And obviously she saw the writing on the wall and decided today to officially drop out of the UCP. Our Reed Small in Vancouver's got an interesting story on 300 basically protection officers are being dispatched to provincial hospitals to try and stop and prevent any sort of potential violence. It looks like they're mainly talking about COVID incidences, but sort of security guards at every door. Our Mike Thomas has got a quirky, lighter story. We've all been stuck in the middle seat on an airline flight, and there's absolutely nothing worse than that. Well, Virgin Australia has come up with a unique way to make it more attractive to people, and they're doing sort of a lottery of, if you pick the middle seat, you have a chance to win large cash prizes and travel to glorious destinations around the world. So that's a little bit different from the constant political news. So that's what's making headlines at the moment, Cory. There's guarantee you lots more to come this afternoon.
Right on. Well, there you see. So there's a benefit for skinny and short people who would be comfortable in one of those god-awful middle seats on airplanes. They can be rewarded for that sacrifice of getting in there and letting the large people, or people like myself with small bladders who have to sit near the aisle unless you want to get my butt in your face every 20 minutes. It's good to see some creative capitalist ideas to deal with that.
Yeah, I have to admit my bladder makes me an aisle man myself.
Right on, Dave. Well, thanks for all that, and we'll talk to you after the show.
Okay, sounds good, Cory. Thanks.
All right, that is our news editor, Dave Naylor. Lots going up on the site. As he said, it's a very busy one. Lots of things going on. Everything from, we cover a lot of stuff on the Western Standard, from those, little public interest stories like the middle seat thing to domestic stories. We do talk about the WEF or inside political stuff. We get those scoops like Linda did with Leela here, there, where she may or may not be going in the future in a run. So the reason we can do all that, the reason we got the newsroom, this is where I nag you, this is where I put my hand out, is because you guys subscribe. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed already to the Western Standard. This is how we stay independent. This is why the legacy media is falling by the wayside, because people like us will not take government subsidies. We rely on you, and we respond to you. For $10 a month, $99 for a year, get full access to everything, guys, and it helps us keep things going. So, hey, thank you all who've subscribed already. And if you haven't yet, guys, get on there, take out a subscription. This is how we keep independent media going. This is how we can cover these kinds of stories and keep covering them. Yes, I noticed Gary mentioned, I saw something from Shadow about that. Yeah, Shadow Davis. There were some problems with the platforms last night. By the way, I just got to remind everybody, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Twitch, Rumble, and Telegram. We're broadcasting to all of those now. For the time being, we haven't been kicked off YouTube in a while. So good to see you all on there. Just make sure to always maybe subscribe to multiple ones, because it is so arbitrary on how we get kicked off of things and so on that you never know where we might be available, where we aren't. So maybe have a backup, because I appreciate you coming in. Sometimes if we get suspended from one for speaking to the wrong news, you'll still be able to find us somewhere else. Let's see now. KJF and others talk about buckshot with that bear, shoot, shovel, shut up. I really just would rather not. Mary saying, put honey in the neighbor's yard. Yeah, I don't have neighbors. That's the thing. That's the nice thing where I live. I'm out there in the bush. And Steve saying, electric fences are often used in the past. We do have an electric fence. And boy, I gave myself a hell of a zap setting the thing up too. It gives a good jolt. And at first it seemed to have discouraged the bear. And now the bear doesn't seem to care. But we will deal with him one way or another. Good to see you guys, Denise from BC and the others checking in there. So yeah, lots going on. So Duncan Kinney, I'll give a little more background on that guy. If you aren't familiar with him, he's a wiener. He's a piece of work. He's this extreme leftist. I believe it's probably some union money that got his little Press Progress site going together. It's just a little funded attack dog for the far left on social media, and he's managed to get his ass into the legal soup a number of times. There was a Christian Academy west of Calgary. He got sued by them. He had to put out a groveling apology letter because he spread lies about them, and basically, unless he wanted to get himself bankrupted, had to back down and retract and apologize to them. I'm pretty sure, but I won't say 100%, but I'm pretty sure among the people that Kaylin Ford, and she was terribly wronged by a number of people in all sorts of media, but particularly with Press Progress, or I'm not sure if Press Progress or Progress Alberta. Either way, he might be in the middle of that lawsuit too. Good. There are means to get at these sorts of underhanded people. But this latest one out of him just shows how crazy and goofy and pathetic Duncan Kinney is. Or maybe anyways. We'll see. He's been charged, not necessarily convicted, but of vandalizing that statue. And I had some discussions on social media. People say, well, you're standing up for that Nazi on the statue. I don't care about the statue. I don't. That's up to other people. But the way to deal with it isn't to go out and vandalize it. It was on private property, as a matter of fact. It wasn't a public statue. The other thing is that's goofy with Duncan Juicy Smollett Kinney is that he actually, the day after the vandalism of the statue, reported on it in his little publication and acted as if he had an exclusive or a scoop on it because they hadn't caught him yet. Yeah, he kind of made up his own little news story and reported on himself. This guy's nuts. So either way, it's good to see him get his comeuppance. He's been charged with mischief. You might be familiar with that charge. It's the same one that Tamara Leach is suffering under right now. I'm hoping that they drop the charge with Tamara Leach. But Duncan, let him wear it. We'll see how that goes to the courts. Maybe, I doubt it. Guys like him never quite go away, but hopefully that knocks him a little more into the background where he deserves to be. So Leela here, I was talking a bit with somebody out in the office too about the AGM with the UCP last weekend that was held, and Western Standard was there. I didn't make it up there, but I watched it closely, of course, and things like that. And the thing that a lot of anti-UCP people, I guess you could say, people opposed to it, were hoping for. They were hoping for infighting. They were hoping for screaming matches. They wanted to see, maybe some MLAs or cabinet ministers stomping out the door. They've been really hoping that party would not show signs of unity because, that's the only way, really, I think, that they might not be able to win the election next spring. And as far as that goes, the party looked pretty unified. The only one we're seeing now who's kind of politically homeless, and she was left out of cabinet, though, of all the ones who ran against Danielle Smith in the leadership, is Leela here. And now she's announced, we just broke that and we got that out there, and she's not going to run at all, at least not for the UCP. We'll see. Her policies do put her more akin to the Alberta Party if she wants to, chase that 4 or 5% support there, or perhaps she might even run for the NDP. You never know. Things that were going on with Ms. Ahir, though, she was going to lose her own nomination. So even if she'd said she wanted to continue and carry on and run for the UCP, she didn't really have a seat that she could run in for the UCP. So she's out. So that's the first of any of the elected people officially kind of leaving. And at this point, she's not saying it's happening because of her loathing of Danielle Smith's leadership or anything like that yet. But again, with the amount of people they have in caucus, and that's the only one breaking out so far, I think so far, though, of course, it hasn't been a very long time, unity has been maintained within the UCP caucus. And again, Conservatives are prickly. They're their own worst enemies, and I'm sure Danielle Smith has got quite the task ahead of her with that herd of cats to keep them all together. But so far she has, and that way that allows her to focus on just the endless attacks she gets from the legacy media and all the others. I've just never seen such a barrage against an elected official like that. They're just lined up to pick at her and hit her wherever they can. And one of the areas, it segues well in. She dared, as a senior elected official, as a premier, to call out the World Economic Forum. As I said, my opening monologue, she actually said, yes, these guys do not belong involved with our provincial healthcare system in any sort of capacity, advisory, partnership, whatever you want to call it. Why on earth were they there in the first place? And in return for that, of course, they're trying to paint Smith as a crazed conspiracy theorist who is gone off the rails. But no, the facts are all there about the WEF. That's I got to give them credit for it almost. They're so cliche in what they are that they get dismissed right off the bat as being a conspiracy. It seems like something out of a James Bond movie with these guys. But they're there. It's in the open. You just have a look. And it's been put together by Margret Kopela. She might correct me on the pronouncing of her last name in a moment here, but she put the book out, The Great Reset Exposed, 18 Essays Against the Great Reset. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute and get a lot more detail on it. Before that, though, we will run another ad. It's not just you guys who subscribe, who help us pay the bills around here, but we have some advertisers, and the Alberta Prosperity Project has an event coming up in a couple of days here. So have a listen, and we will get straight to that book.
Alberta Prosperity Project is dedicated to protecting Alberta's world-class energy sector and has invited Alex Epstein, American author of the best-selling new book, Fossil Future, to speak on the importance of fossil fuels and the vital role they play in our economy. Join us on Friday, October 28th at the Weston Calgary Airport for Beef and Beer with Alex Epstein. You will not want to miss this. Buy your tickets at www.albertaprosperityevents.com today.
Great. Well, that's coming up right away, guys. It'll be an interesting event. Okay, we have our guest in there. Hello, Margret. Are you hearing me all right there?
I sure am, Cory. Nice to be here.
Great. Oh, I really appreciate it. And the timing is good. I mean, we'd booked you before this came about with Danielle Smith and the Alberta thing, but it actually brought it into the news. And it's an opportune time to really clarify a bit of just what is the WEF and what is their agenda. As I said, it's not a hidden sort of thing. And
no, not at all. And the article you're referencing is a review that I have written for a C2C journal on the subject of about a book, a review of a book called Against the Great Reset. What is the Great Reset? The Great Reset is an idea espoused by the World Economic Forum. What is the World Economic Forum? It is an annual gathering of the world's elite, industrialists, politicians, even royalty shows up, certainly media. Politicians of all stripes show up for a gab fest, to exchange ideas, to do lots of networking. It's existed since 1971. Started out just as a conference led by a gentleman by the name of Klaus Schwab, a business professor, and who lives in Geneva, and who has since built this annual gathering into a major international institution. They now have headquarters in Geneva. They are more than a gabfest. They are now a full-blown think tank with ideas, with prescriptions, and with promotional ability for very clear ideas they have about how the global economy should run.
Great. Well, I appreciate you clearing that. I misinterpreted how that book came about, but yeah, I did read the essay, and just that reminder to people. Yes, it's at the C2C Journal, 18 essays in Against the Great Reset.
The book does exist. I mean, the book is far more comprehensive than anything I've written. I've just glanced across some of the key zingers and ideas in it.
Yeah, and so I mean, when it's gone beyond think tank and they've gotten a bit activist, it's a bit of what I said in my opening monologue, and you sort of had a line on that in the article in the C2C, you know, or as part of the essays, when just talking is no longer enough. Like their ambitions, they don't just want to talk about it anymore. They want this stuff to get going.
That's right, absolutely, and that's why they're actually in the process now of setting up contracts. I wasn't aware of the one that they had contracted with Alberta, but certainly they have done a contract with the federal Liberals with a view to getting some kind of a digital ID system in place. And of course, the digital ID is one of the fourth industrial revolution's new ideas, new innovations that will bring us all. Who knows what the agenda here is? But it's on the one hand, you think yes, digital ID sounds great. It'll solve all kinds of problems in terms of communication, pulling together different files and different bits of stuff that we all have to carry around with us all the time. But on the other hand, the downside, what's the disturbing side? Is this not possibly the beginning of the surveillance state? Is this not this sorry lesson? We had a taste of this, of course, when the supporters of the truckers had their bank accounts foreclosed. So, there are always two sides to all of these great innovations, all these great ideas. And it's up, the question is, how do you sort through them? Do you sign on with the great thinkers and experts and ideas people at the World Economic Forum? Or maybe we let our legislators deal with this kind of thing. And one of the conclusions by one of the essayists in the book is that they clearly don't have any confidence in our individual governments. Somehow or other, they've got to come up with the ideas, and somehow or other, we're going to sign on with them. So this is one of the aspects, the arrogance and some of the disrespect that you see coming out of the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, well, and the digital ID is another one of those things. It's an ambition right in the wide open that could, it makes sense to some of us. I open my wallet, I've got my social insurance card, I've got my healthcare piece of paper one in Alberta that's falling apart, I have my driver's license. Boy, it'd be convenient to pack it all on one card. And it would certainly be convenient to me, but it'd also be convenient to somebody who wants to track and control everything I do, whether it's accessing healthcare, driving, entering a business, or purchasing something. And I don't want somebody else in control of all that.
That's right, and your health records and everything else, and all of a sudden you're an open book to somebody who's running the system like this. At least at the moment, it's spread out. You'd be hard to track down if somebody wanted to. So no, this is fairly typical though of how they've got, the ideas that are coming out. Let me just recapitulate some of those ideas for you. One is, the ideas come from three main publications from Klaus Schwab himself. Of course, he's the instigator, he's the ideas man, he is the chief organizer behind the World Economic Forum. He's been at it since 1971, which is when he published his first book, a very obscure book whose title I can't even remember, but its main idea must not be forgotten, which is stakeholder capitalism. He's been pushing stakeholder capitalism now since 1971. What's stakeholder capitalism? It's no longer should corporations be answerable merely to their shareholders, but to the whole of civil society. Another idea, another book, the Fourth Industrial Revolution came out in 2016. There he talks gives a big history of all the different revolutions that have taken place, what the internet brought, the different transportation systems that have totally turned our worlds. I mean, these resets have come along on a regular basis, it has to be said. And he's certainly got that side of things right. Every time a major new transformative technology comes along, it changes everything. So the internal combustion engine is what I'm thinking of here. And of course, marry that to Texas oil gushers, and you've got a totally different continent, right? From highway systems and suburbs and three-car garages and bridges and what have you to accommodate what arose out of this technology. So yes, so the fourth industrial revolution, he's saying now what we're can look forward to is the fact that we have new technologies, physical, digital, and biological, which will impact all our disciplines and even challenge ideas about what it means to be human. Now think about that. Well, you marry biological and physical and digital.
Yeah, I mean, the things that, again, yesterday's conspiracies are becoming today's realities.
Absolutely. In fact, it's taking about 5 months these days.
Yeah. And you spoke of like the stakeholder governance. Well, what that is ESG, which has been, in my view, just, polluting corporate governance around the world, particularly in the West, where they've lost track of what your corporation was even set up for in the first place. You're not social justice warriors. You should be providing a product or service and trying to generate a profit for your shareholders, nothing else. I mean, while staying within the law, of course.
Yes, of course. And you leave it with your shareholders to have their own conscience about how things should work and how they should operate. And because they're the ones who are plugged in and they're the ones who have confidence in your company to begin with. And they're carrying the cost. And once you bring other people in, they come in with no risk. And yet they're given all these, given a megaphone with which to shout out their latest grievance. I beg your pardon? And the shareholder has to pay for this? I don't think so. Now, a conscientious shareholder will say, well, yes, I'm listening to this, so I will act, like our own governments do. I will act and see that something's done about this. But it's vastly different from giving power to outsiders, I think.
Yeah, well, and we're seeing that influence coming in. I mean, one of the big areas that kind of exposed it in Canada was, Schwab bragged about influencing the Trudeau cabinet and Trudeau himself. And Justin Trudeau did let slip, in a sense. Again, he's not a deep thinker. He might just be parroting a line he read somewhere, but he spoke to a great reset. And actually, when we have a prime minister who, I guess you could say, could be as easily influenced as Prime Minister Trudeau, I guess I don't want people like Schwab whispering in his ear.
Well, indeed. But you know what? You don't even have to have Schwab whispering in his ear. Although in his case, it probably has taken place. Don't forget. We've got people like Trudeau and Chrysler Freeland who were actual graduates of their Young Leaders Forum. In fact, Klaus Schwab himself has boasted to the effect that half of Trudeau's cabinet has been a young World Economic Forum leader. So these are people who have not, okay, they're acting independently, they have ideas of their own, but they all have been exposed to and have been part of this great thing called the World Economic Forum. And so has Mark Carney, incidentally. Both Christopher Freeland and Mark Carney have been either are or have been members of the Board of Trustees. I'm not sure about Mark Carney. There's a little bit, it's not clear on the net exactly what his relationship is now with the World Economic Forum. So no, you don't even have to have anybody whispering in anybody's ears. You just have these people who have had the privilege to, hobnob with the world's elite, and just think what kind of influence that by itself would have. Not only that, not only do they not have to whisper in ears, they have gone so far as to provide the language themselves. So where do terms like the Great Reset come from? Where do terms like Build Back Better come from? Where do terms, that this is such a great opportunity? How many times have we heard here in this country about what an opportunity the pandemic gave us so that we could reset and get on with, completely new, building back better. Those are phrases straight from the World Economic Forum. So they're providing the language. Sounds great. It sounds utopian. It sounds noble. It sounds, it's why would anybody complain? And of course they're counting on this. So, one of the big cautionary lessons I learned from this, or rather this book again confirmed for me, is how important it is that we monitor how language is used, because it can be manipulated. It can be deceptive. It can be turned for, and that's just, when it's well-intentioned. When it isn't well-intentioned, when you get name calling, when you get, which again has its own set of metrics, name calling for, which at a minimum is usually about people who can't make their case, but increasingly it is being used to shut down debate, and worse than that, to pathologize your political opponents. And what happens when you pathologize your political opponents is you no longer have to pay them any attention, give them any respect, even encourage other people not to pay them attention or give them any respect. So this is very, very disturbing, how language is being used. It's not just Orwellian. There's a whole set of dynamics which are going on here, which we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, well, and that language, it isn't as pretty sounding as they try to make it out to be. I mean, the bottom line of the reset, you call it an opportunity. I call it opportunism. That gives a motivation to actually make a crisis worse, because the theory behind it is that if we can drag the world down to a crisis level, it gives us the opportunity to tear down their systems and rebuild them. But there's going to be a whole lot of suffering in that transition to this socialist utopia, and that's a pretty horrible way to get to it.
That's right, exactly. And there's no question we are going through a major transition. But the point is, and some of the very good essays in the book talk about how you can't design these things. The problem with any kind of grand schemes is you're looking at grand catastrophes. That's always what's happened, in fact, with Marxist attempts at Marxist type style governments, whether Stalin or Mao or Hitler. They don't work. And it's not just that there aren't any useful ideas within them. It's just that once you start to impose huge grand plans, you're just begging for some little thing to be wrong, and then all of a sudden the whole thing is thrown off gear. So no, and the same thing is true with innovation. For all the stimulus that our bankers, central bankers, and our governments can supply in terms of monetary and fiscal stimulus, there is no substitute. They can't, they can take the horse to water, but they can't make them drink. They are not going to they cannot force somebody to invent the internal combustion engine or an electrical engine. They are not going to be able to force anything. These are all the purview of plain old human ingenuity. People who see a problem and that one person who says, I've got an answer, I'm going to try it out, I'm going to patent it, and I'm going to do this. So the book is chock-a-block with, useful stuff like, hey, how did the big industrial revolution that really fashioned the world for the better part of 2 centuries out of England, how did that happen? Guess how? Liberating labor, patent laws, property rights. Once people had these things, they went out and they invented. They came up with the spinning wheel and looms, and back then it was all about the spinning jenny, and the textile industry drove the big transformation, big transition. But yeah, this is how it's done, and you don't do it with grand schemes. You do it by liberating people to do their best and to come up with their great ideas.
We're seeing, I won't go far down that rabbit hole, but Atlas Shrugged seems to be playing itself out in a lot of ways almost with what was a fictional concept of a world where lobbying is more effective than innovation. And, you want to get in with the government rather than serve the people.
Yes.
But I mean, we're seeing something are we maybe hitting a tipping point? Like, have they maybe pushed it too far? We're starting to see that sort of discussion. We're seeing it from Pierre Poilievre, though he felt perhaps pressured into it.
Yes.
But I think Premier Smith is definitely genuine when she's saying, I have no use for these guys and I want them to have no part of what we are doing whatsoever. Maybe we're going to see more of that.
Yes, hopefully. But I think there's a fine line to navigate here. The vast majority of, for instance, Albertans, I would assume, are still ordinary Albertans, are ordinary Canadians, and all of us are not really up to speed on this stuff. And most of us are worried about climate change, and we are looking for solutions. And anybody who comes along with some utopian idea, some grand sounding idea, no matter how woolly it is ideologically, we're inclined to buy into it. So it is really important, I think, for people like Danielle and Pierre to walk the talk more than talk the talk. Get on with doing what needs to be done. But in the meantime, bear in mind you're still getting up to speed populations.
Yeah, well, as long as I guess we start the conversation, it's coming out. We're hearing more of this. I mean, I'm 51 years old. That organization was formed when I was born. And to be honest, I'd never even heard of them until perhaps 2 or 3 years ago. So it is starting to come out in the open.
This is the way it's done. And I mean, so long as we do it in a reasonable way and get education. I mean, the politics of explanation is never wasted. Explain. Get out there and say this is in a measured way, and in a way that people, and in plain language.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your coming on, and we'll keep talking about it, and we'll keep watching these.
Enjoy your columns. I like the plain language particularly.
Much appreciated. And you do have that book out, the Dog Bone Portfolio. Before I let you go, to remind people, you are an author, and you've written other things besides the.
Right. Well, I can speak about this with some authority because I spent 5 years of my life studying the technological transition cycle, which is really what the Great Reset is all about. And what's interesting is that the World Economic Forum has it absolutely right. We are moving into a Great Reset. Where they have it dead wrong is all the things that are discussed in the book against the Great Reset. You cannot prescribe. You cannot go out there and make things happen. You cannot. You have to get the problems out there and then let human ingenuity at the local level find the answers. And furthermore, at the local level, you mitigate risk. Okay, at the local level, you might make a little mistake. Fine. You're not ruining the world. You try these ideas on a global scale, you're looking for a global catastrophe if you don't get it right. And the chances that you won't get it right are pretty profound.
Great. Well, where can people find more information about you before I let you go?
I do have my book has a website. You look at it there. It's the dogboneportfolio.com. I also have my own website. I used to be a columnist, so some of my old columns are still up on the web, margretkopela.com.
Great. Well, I really
and C2C. I do have several articles up on C2C. I think this is my third or fourth that I've done generally on the subject of the vaccine mandates and now on the Great Reset.
Yeah, and it's c2cjournal.ca, and that's a C with the number 2, journal.ca. Well, thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate frank discussion and people digging into this, and I think if we keep talking about it enough, we can shut this thing down yet. It's not a done deal.
Well done. Absolutely.
Great.
Thanks, Cory.
Thanks. Okay, so that was Margret Kopela, and talking about that book, which is, getting back to that, The Great Reset. And, you know, it starts out with a statement. I'm going to get on. We got some breaking news, too, with a statement from Jane Fonda from October 2020, you know, a noteworthy leftist, and a good quote to grab, where she said, "I think COVID is God's gift to the left." And she's not saying it like it's a bad thing. All right, so I see it sounds like, I'm not sure if Dave's able to come in or not, but we got something breaking. There's been another attack on the CGL pipeline. Hi, Dave. What's going on out there?
Yeah, Cory, it appears that it may be another eco-terrorist attack out in Smither against the CGL pipeline, a hotel where workers on the pipeline were staying in Smithers, had numerous vehicles set on fire overnight. As you can see by the pictures that we found on Twitter, the entire parking lot is now taped off with police tape, and you can certainly see numerous vehicles heavily damaged. This is the latest incident out there on the pipeline. You'll remember it was only a few months ago, a terrifying night where 15 eco-terrorists showed up and were throwing firebombs and at RCMP officers and stuff like that. I don't think we've had an update from the RCMP since then, but we certainly haven't heard that they've arrested anybody. So this looks like another incident. Our BC reporter, Reed Small, is making some phone calls, typing as fast as we can, and we'll get this story up right away, Cory.
Right on. Yeah, I know Reed digs in there and dials. He's good at getting those facts out there. So, kind of, I guess, in a morbid way, look forward to seeing what happened out there.
Yeah, it's not good.
No. All right. Well, there we have it, guys. Breaking. So the CGL pipeline, as Dave laid out, it sounds like there may have been another terrorist attack on it over in BC there. You know, this is what happens when the government's got its priorities all wrong. When they allow guys like David Suzuki to go around and say that pipelines will be blown up with impunity. When you've got this attack that happened last February with people attacked with bats, with equipment burned and smashed, no arrests, no updates. This is empowering the lunatics. This is empowering the extremists. They're saying we can get away with this. We can keep doing it. And look, lo and behold, they are. What's the government doing? Oh, we're going to crack down on bouncy castles, hot tubs, pig roasts. Doesn't matter what's up in northern BC. Unfortunately, it's because the government at the same time, you got to remember, is guided by an ideological maniac who's something of a moron named Justin Trudeau. I mean, this is the guy who told Germany, who's heading into a winter energy crisis, that there's not a business case for natural gas. Justin Trudeau has no mind in reality. He doesn't. He has no clue. So he just wants to be this green savior. He wants to stop climate change in any sort of way he can do it, including sitting with his thumb up his ass while there's multiple terrorist attacks on the CGL line. It's just another way that he can get towards that agenda that he has. I mean, it's not even just the major techs. This has been going on for years. I mean, let's review what that Coastal GasLink line is. It's natural gas, guys. Even if it leaked, it's not going to be putting oil all over the place or anything. It's heading to a terminal to export liquid natural gas. There were, I believe, 21 native bands along the right-of-way of that pipeline, and the Coastal GasLink Company Coalition got agreements with all 21 native bands. But some environmentalist assholes have made up crap about these hereditary chiefs and have been using that, and they're fed by the CBC, our state broadcaster, and doing illegal blockades and protests and things on that pipeline for years now when it should have been quashed long ago. And you don't need the Emergencies Act to quash this. You just need to enforce the damn law. And they won't do it. They won't do it because they don't want that thing done. They want to scare oil and gas out of Canada. We're an investment pariah. How many LNG terminals were proposed in the last 8 years in Canada? 14, 15, I believe. Only one is under construction, and that one is supposed to be fed by this pipeline that's chronically delayed by this government that's castrated itself legally and will not enforce the law up there. So, of course, this is going to keep happening. You know what? It's going to keep happening as long as Prime Minister Ding Dong is in office. It's not going to change. I guess we can be thankful for whatever reports we're getting out of this, that it doesn't sound like anybody's been injured. But I mean, look at these attacks. Somebody's going to get hurt or killed soon. These extremists are getting farther and farther along in their extremism. They're not going to stop. This thing is getting done. The pipeline's progressing. And when these extremists, if they're not caught and they don't feel that they can be held accountable, they're going to up the ante. What'll it be next? Setting a bomb? Shooting at somebody? Kidnappings? They have to get in there and take this seriously. I can't find it hard to believe that with this many attacks, this much stuff going on for this long up there, and our law enforcement authorities don't have any suspects, they can't figure it out. Come on, spare me. But of course, again, they probably have been told not to really prioritize it. We got to remember Brenda Lucki is Justin Trudeau's pet commissioner. She just does what she's told. We have a recording of that. She's politicized. The RCMP isn't there. You know, there's some of the discussions we've had in Alberta. People say, why do you want an Alberta Provincial Police Force? Well, there's friggin' why. Because we can't trust the federal force. They're bound by an ideologically driven imbecile of a prime minister. And they won't protect us. They won't protect our industries. They won't move those things forward. If we have our own force, we can prioritize it. So that force is standing up for us, not for Trudeau's agenda. And it's not to say the individual officers are bad with the RCMP, by the way. That's the way people always try to turn us around. It's not the officers, it's the problem. It's the structure and who they answer to. If we brought in a provincial force, a great deal of those officers could be retrained and pop in and join the provincial force. They're not all bad. And I'm sure a lot of them would much rather actually be out there chasing criminals and terrorists on things like pipelines. That's what they signed up for. It's a calling to be a police officer. They don't just want to write traffic tickets. They don't want to go after people with bouncy castles or honking horns. They want to go after terrorists and criminals and violent people. And we got a whole raft of them right in BC. But nobody can apparently catch them. These are some of the best criminals on earth somehow. Really? Come on. Spare me. All right, I got to talk about one of our sponsors before I get on ranting about some more news items and things. Speaking of threats and rights and the RCMP, and that's the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. This has been a great area where the West's been standing up too. This is another reason why we need a provincial police force, because the federal government wants to take our property. They want to steal our property. And there's a few ways to push back. And one of which is joining a group like the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. You have to stand up for your rights, guys. Because if you don't, you will lose them. And the government wants our firearms. These guys, they're pushing back. They've had court challenges. They expose things. They have a great site full of news. Plus, all sorts of other assets. If you're a shooter, you know, you're a hunter, you're a target shooter, you're a collector, any of those things. They've got links to trade shows or upcoming shooting events, all sorts of things as well. Part of being within an association. And if you like your firearms, you know, a lot of people take them very seriously and they enjoy them. You want to network with other people who enjoy it as well for all sorts of uses. I mean, most important is pushing back to make sure you can keep and maintain those firearms, but all the rest of this stuff. So guys, check them out. You got to join up. You got to take out a membership. It's not much actually. And it's an investment into your own rights. And it's the Canadian Shooting Sports Association, CSSA-CILA.org. And they've been, of course, a great sponsor for us for quite some time. Yeah, let's just pivot a little here. Claudette Least commenting, I see, pointing out, yeah, Elon Musk just walked into Twitter. There's an interesting thing, right? Now, he's a character I like seeing. Speaking of disruptors, shaking things up, and we've seen some of the discussion, you know, and we've had problems as a broadcaster. By the way, C11 just went through the second reading in the Senate today, so our speech and our ability to broadcast is going to be threatened. It is threatened already by this totalitarian-leaning government. And Things like Twitter, though, I mean, has been terrible left-leaning. I mean, they made no secrets about it. They shadow ban, they crunch down on people. It's still my favorite playground. You know, I'm at Cory B. Morgan on Twitter if you really want to get into it and scrapping, or you want me to insult and berate you, that's the best place to get me going. But Musk, it looks like he's bringing her in and buying it. He's going to lay off 75% of them. Yeah, I mean, whatever Musk might be, he's not stupid. I mean, that's 75%. What were they doing? Probably not a hell of a lot. In fact, those are the ones that were probably censoring and filtering. And you see, Twitter is a powerful tool. A lot of people don't realize that. It's not just, you know, people get upset because, oh, it's a cesspool. Everybody just fights on there and it's not good for anything. It's not a good debating platform. There's no doubt about that. But it is a good, fast information sharing platform. And it's not just what's shared on Twitter, it's who is on Twitter. Because even though most of the public isn't on Twitter, every politician is on Twitter. Every big decision maker is on Twitter. Every media member is on Twitter. And sometimes they turn that into their echo chamber. In fact, that's where they get their worldview. If they don't turn their head away from Twitter now and then, they think that's the real world. And they're drinking their own bathwater. And they lose track of reality, especially when Twitter's been cranked to filter and give an extra amount of weight to left-leaning views while crushing the conservative ones. And Elon Musk, he's not saying right or left. All he's saying is we're going to open it up. That's all. It's not, and of course they're going wild. They're going to lose a lot of influence and push. As I said, it's not your run-of-the-mill person that's on Twitter necessarily. You know, I think there's only 20-30% of the population on Twitter. But all of the media are. There's a great image, that classic with the girl screaming. That was during Trump's inauguration. You know, as Musk gets up there and gives the finger and comes in and takes it. And good on him. Good on him. I just want to see what happens with that. That deal's gone back and forth, and let's shake that thing up, guys, and get the discourse and the conversations going. Because I mean, the social media giants, they're our enemy and our friends at the same time. I mean, that's why the government wants to control it so bad. That's why we got C11, C18. They are afraid. They're afraid of us talking with each other without them filtering the message. They're afraid of us communicating. They're afraid of us talking about things like the WEF when they wanted to keep that dismissed in the background. As I said, I'm fairly politically dialed in. I never even really heard of these guys until a few years ago. I guess they were always there, but it's never anything to look at. Social media is allowing us to find these things and talk about these things and bypass the subsidized garbage that's legacy media today. It allows things like the Western Standard to get out to you without having to go through the government controls. And we've got to stand up for that. So was it yesterday, Marie? I see with C11 passing the Senate. Okay, yeah, like it's scary and it's terrible. So I like to think, and I hope people like Musk, other creative people, ambitious people, we're going to make it like whack-a-mole. When they close down the speech over here, the speech will pop up over there, and you whack it over there and it's going to pop up over here. They're not going to stop it. They're going to try and stop it, but they're not going to manage. And we look at how legacy media, mainstream media, there's still a few good reporters in them, but not many left anymore, good columnists and journalists. But they're beholden. They're beholden. They're dependent. They've been bleeding money. And when we're talking about Atlas Shrugged earlier, if you haven't read it, people, you really should. But part of it, you know, it's a fictional novel, but it certainly comes into a lot of realistic things that are happening today, very prescient, even if it was written in the 50s. And rather, the media moguls, the ones who are in there, rather than look at their business model, look at why are they losing money, why are they bleeding, why are they losing their reach on people. Instead, they've fallen into, please bail us out. Please bail us out. And the government more than happily hands them money, says, yes, we will help you. We will bail you out. Well, as soon as you bailed out, you're beholden. As soon as you've taken the handout, you're broken. You now have to answer to them. And the government is offering subsidies and bailouts all over the place. And I like to always remind people for two reasons. For one, because, hey, it's a point of pride. It's a nice FU to the state. The Western Standard doesn't take any subsidies. And it keeps us independent. Like I said, we columnists have our leanings, absolutely. You know, we're conservatives around here. But we answer to you. If our stuff stunk, if we were feeding you baloney, if it was garbage, you guys would stop viewing the shows. You guys would stop reading our columns. You'd stop reading our news copy, and you wouldn't subscribe anymore. So we can beat it, guys. We can bypass it. But this dinosaur of an ugly legacy media and establishment is going to go out in an ugly way. It's a parasite. If you've ever removed a wood tick, if you really want to see it grab on hard, it's when you're extracting it. It'll be at its worst. But we're pulling, guys, and it's popping off. Somebody was commenting, I think it was Dave, and Dave was at the Sun for many, many years. And it's got to be kind of mixed, I guess. I mean, he's here with the Standard, and he's proud of what he does. But it's got to be a shame to see the old newspapers going like that. But yeah, the Sunday Sun, a recent one, I mean, I used to look forward to that. Nice, big, thick newspapers down to like 27 pages or something like that. And they don't even publish on Mondays any longer. They're dying, guys. They're dying. And part of it, and they don't even know it, is because they've lost trust. They were so gross. They embarrassed themselves during the convoy with their coverage. They embarrassed themselves. They were so slanted, so worked up, that people said, oh, I can't take this anymore. And I turn all the channels and I get the same crap coverage. They're basically just reading the federal government press releases. So, we've got the options. And during that time, True North as well, Rebel. I mean, let's tip the hat to the other ones as well. We all got flooded with subscriptions, and we've maintained them. We kept them. And again, the people who've stayed on, thank you. And somebody was pointing out, I'm not sure if that was Jet or saying thank you for, it's our 3rd anniversary. It's 3 years the Standard's been going. Derek and Dave, we're starting with just next to nothing and getting things rolling 3 years ago. And we're still going. We're getting bigger all the time. And a lot of that, again, is thanks to you. So, and it's therapeutic for me because my poor long-suffering wife, Jane, at least I get some of my rants out of myself here rather than always into her poor ear at home having to listen to me going on, ranting and raving like that. And I appreciate it. And speaking of drinking our own bath water, somebody was getting on my case about Uber driving the other day too. I never make a secret of that. I put in a good few hours driving Uber every week in Calgary. I like doing it, guys. I like it. I'm not forced to do it. I like it. And the important thing is with that, all this time I'm talking. Do I tell you what happens when I'm driving Uber? I'm listening. And I get a completely unfiltered mixture of people who talk to me, and I listen to them. And they aren't necessarily conservative or left or right or consider themselves any of those things. They might just be talking about the Kardashians or the weather, or they might talk about politics. I just listen. As opposed to a lot of media members who do nothing but dip into their own waters and read Twitter and Facebook and things like that. Getting out and about is one of the best things that can happen to my mind and keep me thinking and getting other points of views so I can make my points of view and then splat them out at you on this show. So that's another show down, guys, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to me rant and rave. Thanks for tuning in. And we got lots of stuff. Our digital presence is really spreading and developing. Don't forget, Mel Riston does those fantastic specials on Tuesdays. And as well, we got Sean Newman on the Fridays. We got the Pipeline's going to be on later on tonight, where we're going to break down some of this stuff. And of course, I'll be back next week. And we do specials here and there as well. So subscribe to those channels, share them. Let's do the end run against the social media, the others. Share this stuff. Keep that viewership going, guys. And we'll beat them in the end. I'll see you all next week.